Hey everyone, this video is gonna take another direction. Um, I guess it's just sort of a reflection from today's class. I'm in this class called Freedom and Responsibility, and it basically talks about the individual and how he grows up, and um, particular anxieties that we face as we mature and become more responsible and all that. Um, but a lot of the philosophies we're going over tend to be not reductionist, but almost too complex to be, a reflection of human nature. We've been talking a lot about Erich Fromm and his book, Fear of Freedom, and it basically says, we're afraid to be free. We want securities and all that, but on the other side, we can become free, quote unquote, by reuniting with the world. So he kind of sees human development as one. When we're born, we're at one with the world. The simplicity of a child, and then when we get older, we become more individualistic. We develop this sense of I-ness, and we basically develop an ego. And as we get older, we lose connections to family and the securities that they used to bring. So we try to find more securities, but at least Fromm says that Eric Fromm says that true maturity is not looking for escapes all the time. It's being an authentic self, or he calls it the autonomous self, and I think it's kind of interesting. Um, I mean, it makes sense rationally or logically. I just feel like this whole separation between reuniting with nature and with the world. When were we ever apart from it to begin with? Like it's almost as if he's still setting up boundaries, even describing how we set up boundaries. It's kind of, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily defeat the purpose, but it's kind of tricky if all we know is how to analyze things, and we kind of lose sight of the whole development. I mean, think of what Krishnamurti said about freedom, and like everything just is, and we never left that. It's just we over conceptualize and we idealize reality. We think too much, and instead of realizing what we presently are. So instead of us reuniting with the world, is more of just a recognition that we never left it in the first place. We turn it into a process. I mean, I know to some degree there is a process of maturity and development, but this whole self authentication or actualization, whatever you want to call it, is really just realizing that we've always been part of everybody else. I mean, the only way we define ourselves is through other people, and so we're all interconnected to begin with, and we've always been like that. So individualism is kind of confusing because it's described as having a sense of self, but a sense of self can only exist with other people. We can't be ourselves without everybody else. Everything is connected. So I guess in the West, or Western culture has kind of divided things up very literally, so very dualistically. So we feel like the self is separate from the world, but really we're not. I mean, I think Alan Watts said it best when he said, "In the West, we think we are in the world, but we are not of it." But that's the illusion. That's the made up part. We really are in the world, and we are of the world too. Um, and it's only out of habit that we kind of see ourselves as somehow different or separate. And really, all that the way to realize that we are part of the world, I guess you could say, is not conceptually. It's much more simple and direct. But that's why it's so hard, because we have a habit of making things very complex. So that's why in Buddhism and in Hinduism and many of the contemplative practices, they advocate just simplicity, really, and meditation or stillness of mind. Because if you're using your mind all the time trying to analyze things, it's very difficult to sort of just see what is. And that's why they advocate simplicity and resting and abiding in just, mindfulness. Very simple teachings at the very heart of Buddhism and of many contemplative practices for a reason. Is so we don't over rationalize things. So, is this I feel not really. This isn't really talked about much in school, and to I guess everybody's dismay because in all the years of undergraduate school that everybody goes to, I mean, when do we learn simplicity or silence or not overanalyzing things? We're told to just do just the opposite. We're told to rationalize. We're told to analyze and think critically and all this stuff. And I know it's important to some degree to do that, but I feel like we internalize it so much that we confuse all of that, these new thinking skills, for being reality. And I think that kind of builds, it sets limitations on us, because when you develop a concept, or you think, if you see the world just through your ideas, you're basically imposing boundaries on everything, as Ken Wilber might say. So we're setting limitations on ourselves and the environment, and this is sort of how insecurities develop. Because if I'm somehow separate from my environment, if I am different, if I'm not connected, then I have to defend myself because suddenly I feel isolated. So now I have to find ways to build these boundaries and make myself feel secure because of that. But really, that's just, I mean, it comes down to it just sort of being silly eventually. But it could be hell until we realize that. And we overcomplicate everything. And then we feel like we're trapped in our insecurities and our pathologies and all that. So I guess it'd be kind of interesting to see more of this stuff in school. But yeah, so no boundaries, actually. I guess that's a good way to summarize everything. We create our boundaries, we impose them on others, and maybe as we're growing up we need to do that in order to feel more secure with ourselves. But I mean, if we look at us like we look at any kind of other species or any other part of nature, there's a time and place for everything, and eventually we kind of have to let go of that too. So, even the rational mind has to be transcended, I guess you could say, and let go of. And we have to rest back in that simplicity. Um, so yeah, I guess that's it for this video. These are just my thoughts about philosophy of human development. And if you're interested in reading any of this stuff, I recommend Ken Wilber, Alan Watts. I guess those are the two best, I think you could say. Ken Wilber and Alan Watts are very good talking about this sort of stuff. Ken Wilber more so if you want to see more of a developmental map, but Alan Watts sort of is good at this too because he doesn't build maps, he just sort of plays around with thoughts and ideas, but he throws them away just as easily. So he's very good at reminding us not to overanalyze things because he goes through it with us. You know what I mean? His books are they're very analytical in some sense. They're very scholarly, but in another sense they're very playful. So I think that's a healthy way to see words and concepts as things we can play with in diagrams, but not to lose sense of the living present now. So okay, well that's it. That's the end of this video, and feel free to make a response or comment. Thanks for listening.